Hello, it's Monday, November 21st, and you're watching The Big Story with me, Chiao Suen. Subscribe to the Straits Times channel to stay up to date with our live news updates. Now, 2 days after polling, and Malaysia still does not have a new government. After Saturday's hung elections, the two front-runners Pakatan Harapan and Perikatan Nasional remain tied up in talks with other parties in hopes of gathering the required number of seats to form a simple majority. This despite the King's original deadline of 2 p.m. today. Pakatan Harapan Chief Anwar Ibrahim and his Barisan Nasional counterpart Zahid Hamidi met earlier today but have yet to produce Malaysia's next government. Zahid has said his alliance's Supreme Council has not decided who to back. ST's Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teo joins us from Kuala Lumpur. Thanks for joining us today, Shannon. So, the King originally gave the various coalitions a deadline of 2 p.m. today, which has since passed. Now he has granted them an extension of 24 hours. Why would he do that?
Well, for the very reason of the news flow you've been seeing this morning, right? We know that Barisan Nasional, their leaders, led by Zahid Hamidi, met with Anwar Ibrahim and his leaders from Pakatan Harapan to try and duke out a deal now. Nothing concrete has come out of that. Barisan Nasional is saying that, in fact, no official negotiations have begun. So we haven't actually come to a formalized deal. And because of this, Barisan Nasional is saying, give us a bit more time. They've written to the Speaker of Parliament, saying that we need a bit more time, and that's been transmitted to the palace. And the King says, okay, 24 more hours. Now, why this is crucial is because we are in a deadlock, and Barisan Nasional's numbers, they've got 30 MPs. That can break the deadlock either for Anwar or Muhyiddin Yassin, the Perikatan Nasional chief. Now, the difference that we have here is that Muhyiddin Yassin is actually closer to that magic number of 112. I think at this point, he's close to about 100. With the support of GPS from Sarawak. Pakatan Harapan, Anwar Ibrahim needs practically the entire Barisan Nasional with him. So hence this very protracted negotiations on Pakatan's side. And if they can get all of Pakatan Harapan, all of Barisan Nasional, that is exactly 112.
Wow, okay, but right now Malaysia is in uncharted territory politically. Do you think these additional 24 hours will be enough for them to form a coalition government? Will they ever agree? What do you think some of their concerns are, and what is likely to come out of these extra 24 hours?
Well, if you ask Perikatan Nasional, they don't need the extra 24 hours. At about 1 something, their Secretary General Hamzah Zainuddin issued a statement saying, well, we've sent more than 112 statutory declarations to the palace. Muhyiddin Yassin is ready to be sworn in as Malaysia's 10th Prime Minister. So they don't think that the next 24 hours are needed at all. If they had their way, the process would end right now. But that brings up the question, right? Do they really have more than 112 committed MPs? If what Barisan Nasional Chief Zahid Hamidi is saying, he's saying that we haven't committed any of our MPs. So there's an overlap here. Someone is ostensibly lying. So the next 24 hours, I suppose, ostensibly what we're going to see is that this is a process of clearing it up. Both sides, if you're talking about Perikatan and for Pakatan, they've got to really come out and be sure this is the numbers you're sure every one of these MPs are with you. Now, there's a lot of potential for chaos, obviously, because until the deadline, someone could change their mind, alignments could change. The drama you've seen this morning itself, and even from last night when DAP leaders were meeting to decide how to move forward, whether they will go with Anwar's plan to try and get Barisan Nasional's backing. Now, I think there are many concerns for the various coalitions and for the Malaysian public as well. There's a lot of question marks now about how come Pakatan Harapan with the most MPs, it looks like they're not going to be in government. But that's obviously what happened before October 10 as well, right? They had the most MPs and they weren't in government. It's a question about whether Pakatan Harapan should actually work with Barisan Nasional. Now, their leader is the UMNO President Zahid Hamidi, and he is burdened by dozens of graft charges. So is it right for them with all their anti-corruption ideology to work with Zahid Hamidi? On the other hand, Perikatan Nasional is saying we'll not work with Pakatan Harapan, and they've pretty much implied that we won't work with Zahid. We will only speak to BN as a whole if your leader is not Zahid Hamidi. That seems to be the implied messaging, and that's why they have not formally come to the table with BN. They're speaking to individual MPs from Barisan Nasional instead. And at this rate, all they need is about 8-10 BN MPs on their side, and they cross the line.
This elections has really kept us all on the edge of our seats. Thank you so much for your valuable insight, Shannon. Malaysia Bureau Chief Shannon Teo, thank you. Now turning to local news, Singapore Central Bank MAS has issued a statement addressing misconceptions in the wake of the collapse of crypto exchange FTX. One misconception is that it was possible to protect local users who dealt with FTX. Well, MAS cannot do this as FTX operates offshore and is not licensed by MAS. A second question is why Binance was placed on MAS's investor alert list while FTX wasn't. MAS said it was because Binance had solicited Singapore users without a license, while there was no evidence that FTX was soliciting users here specifically. MAS added that the most important lesson learned here is that dealing in any cryptocurrency on any platform is hazardous, and crypto exchanges can and do fail. And if you're in the market for a BTO flat and want a shorter waiting time, it might be worth looking out for the new projects in Tengah. Two upcoming projects in the forest town with a car-free town centre will pilot construction technologies such as 3D concrete printing to increase productivity and cut material wastage. The 2,077 units in Garden Waterfront 1 and 2 at Tengah will have one of the shortest waiting times of 3 years and 4 months in the BTO sales exercise on November 23rd. After years of preparation and hundreds of millions of dollars spent, the 2022 FIFA World Cup in Qatar finally kicked off yesterday. In an attempt to showcase Qatar on a global stage, the opening ceremony featured Morgan Freeman, Jungkook from BTS, and hundreds of performers, as well as plenty of fireworks. But that's where the fun ended for the hosts, as they struggled against Ecuador in the opening match, which ended 2-0 in favour of the visitors. Qatar's loss makes them the first host nation in the World Cup history to lose their opening match. Speaking after the match, Qatar's head coach Felix Sanchez felt that his side did not start the match well enough, but that the team was backed by the supporters. This despite many leaving the stadium even before the match had ended. Joining us from Doha is ST Sports correspondent Sazali Abdul Aziz. Thanks for joining us, Sazali. So you were there at the opening match. Tell us more about what it was like both on and off the pitch.
Well, I think even Singaporeans watching back home saw how extravagant that opening ceremony was. It really was something to behold, and it was a fitting celebration for the start of the tournament, really. I mean, this is the first major sporting event, of course, since the pandemic. And I was there at the Tokyo Olympic Stadium 18 months ago, where, you know, the opening ceremony for that Olympics was a beautiful, graceful affair, but held in a largely empty stadium because of, you know, pandemic restrictions at the time. This time we had a full house, 60,000 people, including royalty. Everyone was wearing broad smiles outside the stadium in high spirits. Festivities had started a good few hours before the kickoff. The weather was cool, very windy, about 23 degrees Celsius, in fact. I think perfect for football, and I think everyone was definitely ready for the big kickoff.
Sounds like the opening ceremony was great, but the same can't be said for the road to the World Cup. From allegations of bribery to concerns about human rights, this World Cup has been marred with controversy. But despite all of this, how has the atmosphere been, and has the event itself been dampened by the negative publicity?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that the criticisms leveled against the host nation have cast a pall over the tournament. You know, even among journalists at the media center, we can hear chatter and, you know, opinions being shared about so-called media narratives and agendas of certain segments of the international media and so on. But really, you know, after last night, there's a feeling that there's relief. You know, it's a feeling of relief that after all the politicking in the lead up to the tournament, football is finally taking center stage, especially now, you know, with the big guns like England today and Argentina tomorrow beginning to feature.
So as you're saying, football is taking front and center. So let's talk about the football. Looking ahead to today's matches, as you mentioned, two of the front runners in the tournament will be in action, with England taking on Iran and Netherlands facing Senegal. How do you see these two matches playing out?
Well, both are tricky teams for all four teams involved. On paper, you would think England should coast to an easy win over Iran, but I think they will only do that if they start the game right and seize the initiative and play with the right tempo. They do have a soft underbelly, defenders Harry Maguire and Eric Dyer and goalkeeper Jordan Pickford are all not in good form. And Iran have good quality in their attack with Sada Azmoun, Mehdi Taremi, and Ali Reza Jahan Baksh. So they could be in trouble if they don't set the right tone and, like I said, start with the right tempo. For the Netherlands, I'm not so sure how far they can go in the tournament, but I do expect them to beat Senegal soundly. Senegal were actually one of the teams I thought could be dark horses for the World Cup, but losing Sadio Mane, who is far and away their best player, I think it's too big a loss for them to overcome.
And of course, I'm curious, Azali, who do you have your money on to win the World Cup? Any players you've got your eyes on?
Yeah, in terms of players to watch, I would like to see how Federico Valverde, the Uruguayan, performs for one of the dark horses of the tournament. And young players like England's Jude Bellingham and Germany's Jamal Musiala as well. All these players are getting their first real chance at showing what they can do at the World Cup. In terms of who's going to win, it's quite clear the two strong favourites for this tournament in Qatar are Brazil and Argentina. A lot of people are going with their hearts and tipping Argentina to win because of the Messi factor. But I am going for Brazil just because I think their pedigree speaks for themselves. They were the first team to win the World Cup outside their home continent. And then they became the first team to win the World Cup in Asia in 2002. Who better to win the first World Cup in the Middle East?
Sounds like it's about to get very exciting. Thank you so much for your valuable insights, Azali. This has been ST Sports correspondent Azali Abdul Aziz. While most of the world was focused on Qatar and the World Cup, happening just 300 kilometers away at the Yas Marina circuit was the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which brought the 2022 Formula One season to an end. World champion Max Verstappen secured his 15th victory of the season. However, all the attention was on a driver further down the grid, with Sebastian Vettel finishing 10th in his final race ahead of his retirement. He signed off with his signature donuts in front of the cheering fans. And before we go, remember the T-Rex skeleton on display here the other week? Well, it was due to go under the hammer in Hong Kong on November 30th, but the auctioneer Christie's has decided not to go ahead with the sale, after questions were raised about the number of replica bones used in the specimen. The T-Rex had been billed as the first skeleton of its species to appear at auction in Asia, and was expected to fetch up to $30 million. And those are our top stories for today. Visit straitstimes.com for more news and our YouTube channel for more videos. Subscribe by hitting the red button below. I'm Chiao Suen and see you tomorrow on The Big Story.